Welcome to a new week. Remember, Monday is a fiction, and you can get rid of it if you want to. I've gotten pretty good at finding things to talk about, so let's go ahead and dive right on in. This is Social Justice Alchemy. And in No, You Started It news, this week, as I record this today, the trade war between the U.S. and China has officially opened. U.S. tariffs on $34 billion worth of Chinese goods have started, and China has a 25% tariff, also worth $34 billion. What a coincidence, on U.S. products. Those have both officially begun today. Trump has already indicated that he might, probably definitely will, be escalating to up to $500 billion worth of Chinese imports. And China, of course, is also threatening to retaliate if Trump does so. I mean, the fact is, you don't have to be well-trained in economics to know that this is an utter shit show. And the people most likely to get hurt are, of course, the working poor. As these tariffs ramp up, if they ramp up or not, I don't know, but as they take effect, as they come into play, what's going to happen is that it's going to cause a decrease in production. People are going to get laid off. What a complete and utter, well, I already called it a shit show, and I think that's, well, no, it could also be a dumpster fire. There are a lot of analogies for this, none of them good. Unsurprisingly, this is causing some conflicts within the Trump administration, mostly between people who are loyal to Trump and people who are holdovers from the previous administration. Trump is, of course, listening to his loyalists, and the loyalists are, of course, doing whatever he wants, telling him whatever he wants to hear. Meanwhile, the holdovers in the previous administration are actual professionals who give a damn, and they are begging, pleading for people to get Trump to stop this nonsense. What I expect moving forward is that a lot of sectors are going to be hit hard by this. A lot of prices are going to go up at the same time that a lot of people are getting laid off. That's the very least that I can come up with. I have no idea how this would have ripple effects in other parts of the economy that you would expect to be completely unrelated. The way our financial sector has so thoroughly interbred with itself and crawled up its own ass, you never know what is going to be damaged when something else gets hurt. In any event, this is not going to go well. Our only hope is that people correctly assign the blame to Trump, and that this fall they vote You would hope that they would vote Democratic Socialists of America, but, at the very least, hopefully they'll vote Democrat. We know that the Republican voters are going to turn out, and they're going to vote Republican. They have had nearly 90-95% support for Trump, even as his support amongst Democrats and independents has dropped to nearly zero. I don't know that there will be an actual blue wave. I never discount the ability of the Democrats to fuck up a good thing. But hopefully we'll get control of the House. Hopefully we'll flip a few Senate seats and hold on to the Senate seats that are up for grabs. And maybe we can maintain that moving into 2020. That is when things are really going to be difficult, because that's a census year, which means maybe we can put an end to some of that Republican gerrymandering. I don't have a whole lot of hope there. We're going to need a lot of really significant work on the ground. But so long as this sort of bullshit stays in place, that will make life harder, but it will make some of the work easier. Maybe. Just as you can never underestimate the ability of the Democrats to fuck things up, never underestimate the ability of Americans to blame the wrong people. Moving on. And not talking about Ms. Daniels' news, remember the good old days when we had a hurricane season? That is to say, when we only got hurricanes during a specific brief portion of the year. The Caribbean is already gearing up to be hit by a hurricane. What was a tropical storm, Beryl, is now predicted to hit the eastern Caribbean as a hurricane. It looks like it's going to, well, not run smack into Puerto Rico. It might run south of Puerto Rico, but of course, Puerto Rico still hasn't been fully repaired since last year's hurricane season. So God only knows what they're thinking now. And since God doesn't exist, no one knows. The reason we don't know what they're thinking, of course, is they still don't have power. Their roads are still impassable. We can't get to them to ask them what they're thinking. And, of course, that's if anyone even wanted to ask them what they're thinking, which they don't, because they're brown. Nevertheless, I'm sure that Republicans are already stockpiling their thoughts and prayers in anticipation of the damage and deaths sure to follow.
And next up we have...
Now, this here would be an I told you so moment, but in order for it to be an I told you so, people would have had to have been listening. And they really weren't. But Maxine Waters, well, she is pretty phenomenal. She blasted Trump, blasted the Republicans, told people to stop being nice and start playing dirty. Fuck civility, basically. And, of course, she, in turn, got blasted by every Republican and by some Democrats. So this story from ABC talks about how black female leaders and allies, they're not happy with the Democrats' response to Maxine Waters. Because instead of supporting her, they have criticized her. Instead of, standing beside her as she's been attacked by the assholes on the right, they have added their voices to the attacks. The reason this would be an I told you so moment from me is because I have said for quite some time now that the Democrats are not a left-wing party. They are not a progressive party. There are progressives in the Democratic Party, don't get me wrong, but they are just one wing of the party, and they are not the wing that's in control of the Democratic Party. The other wing of the Democrats is the conservatives. They're the wing that has been part of the Democrats since before the Civil War. Remember, the other wing of the Democrats, until, just after World War II, was the fascist wing, which migrated over and joined the Republicans in '68. So, the conservatives have always been part of the Democrats, and they are the more powerful part of the Democrats. So, it's no surprise that they're not standing behind genuine progressive Maxine Waters in her attempt to take the attack, to go on the offensive against the Republicans. Conservatives want to keep things the way they are, and the way they are, the way they always have been, is that when a black person speaks in public, they have to be deferential, and they shouldn't be speaking. So no surprises that the Democratic establishment has joined the Republicans in attacking an uppity Negro. So here's hoping Maxine Waters is able to work with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in taking over the Democrats, transforming them into a genuinely center, maybe left-wing, left-leaning party, or maybe a centrist alliance between a left of center and a right of center, namely Social Democrats and Democratic Socialists. We'll see. And one of the more interesting pieces of news that came out this week is that EPA head Scott Pruitt went ahead and resigned. I mean, he was one of the more blatantly, nakedly corrupt appointments in the Trump administration. And one of the, he wasn't necessarily unqualified. Unlike Betsy DeVos, he actually did have expertise when it comes to the EPA. It's unfortunate that his expertise came in the form of opposing the EPA and suing the EPA and trying to do everything he could to dismantle and ruin the EPA, but he did have some form of expertise. Now, this resignation hasn't really cleaned things up because, there's been some infighting, some little slap fights in between various members of the administration over how and why Pruitt chose to resign. Nevertheless, this is kind of a good thing. A leaderless administration like this is going to perhaps be able to get its job done. We'll see. Here's hoping that we're protected from pollution for at least a few more months. In the meantime, feel free to enjoy some schadenfreude. You know what would be nice? If the U.S. weren't the sort of place that separated children from their parents and locked them up in kiddie concentration camps. I'm reading here on CNN that the Trump administration is asking for more time to reunite some separated families, because it's already deported some of the parents of the children they kidnapped. And it's having a little bit of trouble locating those deported parents who came to the U.S. seeking asylum from the dangerous situations they were fleeing from in their home countries. Am I alone in considering the possibility that maybe the reason they're having trouble finding some of these parents is because they've been murdered? Just throwing that out there. We are the evil empire. Never forget that. God damn, I hate a lot of things about our government. Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice? Moving on. Let's get away from this god-awful depressing topic and move on to another less depressing topic. And in What's Old is New Again, CNN reports something that I don't think is... no, it looks like it is new research. Namely, the Frank family, as in Anne Frank, as in Anne Frank, Diary of a Young Girl. Their family tried to flee to the U.S., and it didn't work. Applied for a visa, but immigration officials were skeptical. Remember, at the time, before World War II, the U.S. was still a little bit anti-Semitic, and Jews were routinely turned away from the United States. It was not a good time to be a European Jew. It wasn't really ever a good time to be a European Jew. But the U.S. certainly did not help. The reason I'm saying what's old is new again is because anti-Semitism experienced a sharp surge here in the U.S. during and after the Trump election. Because he was speaking white nationalist talking points. He was shouting Nazi slogans. America first. Make America great again. All that shit was designed to appeal directly to the KKK, which, of course, is the base of the Republican Party. He wanted to get them all fired up, and boy howdy did he. So there's been a spike in hate crimes as well, or at least there was immediately after the election. So this is just, hey, new research shows that the United States has always been this awful. It's just that liberals thought maybe we'd gotten over it. We have not. And here we have an op-ed on CNN.com. Trump's wish for the Supreme Court may be his downfall. Now, this is another place where you should go to opening arguments. They discussed the various people on Trump's shortlist and who Andrew Torres thinks is going to be Trump's pick. Well, obviously, the Republicans are pieces of shit, and this, despite this being an election year, and even though, it's even less time until the election before, they're going to nominate, Trump's going to nominate someone, and they're going to ram it home before the election even takes place. But this op-ed, written by Bradley Tusk, a venture capitalist who gets government contracts, he says that this may be Trump's downfall because the only thing keeping Trump in office right now is, I'm extrapolating, the only thing keeping Trump in office right now is the unstinting support of his base. And thus he has to keep them happy. And by replacing Anthony Kennedy, Roe v. Wade is in play. It's unlikely that the Supreme Court will do a complete about-face and make abortion completely illegal. Instead, they'll probably just take a significant chunk out of it, make it effectively illegal. So what that means is that finally white women will be personally affected by something that Trump has done, and they will abandon him in 2020. That is the prediction. Now, a lot of what's going on here is definitely true. Roe v. Wade is going to be in play, as well as gay marriage. John Roberts made it clear in his dissent to Obergefell that he thinks gay marriage is an abomination. And he expressed in that opinion, again, thank you, Andrew Torres, he expressed in his dissent that he wants to reverse that. He's going to take the earliest opportunity to reverse that. And without Anthony Kennedy and with whoever Trump puts on there, both of those things are going to be up for grabs. And because the far right has been preparing for this moment for years, it's very likely that they're going to try and reverse both of those. White women went for Trump 53%. Fucking suburban... Fucking soccer moms, am I right? Gay white men... Let's see... White men went for Trump 62%. Gay folk generally went for Clinton 77%, which is, not particularly awesome. 14% went for Trump, 9% gave no answer. So I'm thinking that a lot of gay white folks decided that they wanted the hateful bigot more than they wanted to not be murdered. So I'm thinking that with both of those things in play, this guy, Bradley Tusk, the author of the op-ed, might have a point. It won't make a difference to the white evangelicals, but it will swing white women to a degree. It will swing... it will swing white women just because the middle class is getting squeezed. The Republicans are the cause of that. They're certainly not going to cure it. So when it becomes difficult for them to get an abortion, for them to seek reproductive health, it's going to outrage them. And because they are, wealthy white women, it's going to... wealthy. And because they are white women, it will make news, it'll make headlines. It'll pull at the heartstrings, it'll be outrageous, and that could hurt Trump quite a bit. This is not a terrible opinion. I don't know how much of a difference it'll make in red states. In those red states, it's already very difficult to get an abortion. A lot of red states have one, possibly just two, abortion providers. So it's already a long slog and several days worth of work to get an abortion in those states because of mandatory waiting periods and so on. So it'll make a difference. I don't know how big a difference it will make. I think it'll make a bigger difference in the swing states, which is where it would matter a lot more. It'll matter for the congressional races, I think. That's where it will definitely make a difference in the 2020 election. If they manage to get a case up to the Supreme Court before 2020, they might be holding off on that. We'll see. We'll see. I mean, they're eager, but they might play it smart. And let's move on. Fucking Mark Zuckerberg. According to CNN's tech section, Mark Zuckerberg is now the third richest person alive, whereas Jeff Bezos is the richest person in history. This really says a lot about the future, I think, where, between Bezos and Zuckerberg, wealth is generated more by access to data about people so that you can sell to them. So, I mean, that is really what Bezos and Zuckerberg make their money off of. I mean, Amazon does sell you stuff, but more importantly, they sell that data to other people so that they can advertise to you. You buy something on Amazon, you start getting ads for related products. In a lot of ways, we're kind of always at a crossroads where emerging technology could be the worst thing ever or the best thing ever. I strongly recommend people read David Brin's The Transparent Society. It's a nonfiction book in which he explores, how observation technology, surveillance technology, I should say, in which he explores how surveillance technology could help build a dystopian nightmare future or how it could build a wonderful utopian future, depending on whether or not the people have access to this surveillance technology, or if we freak out and try to reserve it just for the police. In the same way, automation is really becoming huge, and we seem to be moving toward some of those utopian sci-fi sorts of things where most work is automated, computerized, mechanized, and so on, and we need far fewer people to actually do labor in order to maintain standards of living. Now, in the sort of dystopian future, we end up with something rather akin to Wall-E, where people are just sort of breeding stock kept there to consume, right? In the more utopian future, we'd end up with something a lot more like Down and Out in the Magic Kingdom or Star Trek, a post-scarcity sort of thing, where people mostly don't have to work. Now, from what I understand, a lot of this throws a big wrench in the Marxist understanding of the way things are. Because, think about YouTube. YouTube, you have people making videos for free that are then hosted for free by Google on their servers. And then they are streamed, and Google puts ads on them, and that's how Google makes their revenue. I mean, in the sort of traditional Marxist approach, the workers should own the means of production. But what does it mean to own the means of production when it comes to YouTube? The content creators are the workers, and Google is the capitalist exploiting them for profit. But what are the means of production there? It's a lot more iffy. And I think in a lot of ways, the Marxist approach, the traditional Marxist approach, seems to not work quite so well in the digital age, where a lot of the wealth is about service and information rather than manufacturing. So I'd be very interested to see how socialism approaches this moving forward. Will we see, would a socialist version of the future see Amazon, Facebook, and YouTube nationalized? That would be kind of weird, kind of wild. I really don't know, and I don't really have a dog in that fight. But in any event, fuck Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos. So there's that. Let's move on. Over on BBC.com, we have a report that Theresa May's cabinet has come to an agreement among themselves as to the future relationship of the UK with the EU after Brexit. According to a reporter on the BBC, Laura Kunsberg, the plan, reached after a 12-hour meeting, would anger many Tory Brexiteers. That's not too surprising to me. I mean, the EU really had the UK over a barrel. They had all the cards. Britain was leaving, but after decades of participation, everything was so wrapped up, tied up, tangled up. I mean, just Brexit is a stupid fucking idea, and it would do nothing but hurt the British people. And so the EU is able to say, hey, we're not going to be hurt by this. You're going to be hurt by this. And so they have they've been getting screwed with their pants on the whole time. So I'm really not surprised. This is going to be, again, this is another case of Schadenfreude. Just sit back, sip your tea, and watch as the British people tell Theresa May where she can shove it. You smell that? That smells like a rich guy offering his opinion where it's not helpful. Yeah, Elon Musk has offered his services to the Thai government to help rescue the 12 boys and their football coach trapped in a flooded cave. He said that the Boring Company is pretty good at digging holes, inserting a nylon tube into the cave and inflating it like a bouncy castle to create an underwater tunnel. I mean, don't ask a venture capitalist for his opinion on anything. Somebody actually tweeted at him and said, "What would you suggest, sir?" This is one of his fanboys, obviously. But we're talking about hundreds of meters of underwater, just tangle with incredibly small sections. It's hundreds of meters underground. Frankly, there's really nothing he can offer. The Thai government is a government, and Elon Musk might be worth a bit, but he doesn't really have anything that the Thai government doesn't have access to. I mean, they have a goddamn military. So, this is just the arrogance of the rich. What do you expect? There's really nothing that they're not going to take him up on this, and he's not going to help anything. Just privileged piece of shit needs to shut the fuck up, back off. And another story I picked up from the BBC's business section: U.S. jobs growth is stronger than expected. U.S. employers added a higher than expected 213,000 jobs last month, extending the U.S. economy's long-running growth streak. And if you look at the graph they nicely provide, you see low unemployment into 2000, then unemployment spikes and reaches a peak in 2004, goes down until about 2008. Then there's a massive spike. I believe there was some sort of crisis around that time, and it's gone down since. There hasn't really been any changes. It's a pretty steady slope from 2009, 2010 until the latest numbers. So one thing's for sure, this isn't really a Trump thing. Although it does look like the line started to flatten out sometime around 2016. The slope got less pronounced as people started to become more uncertain about the economy. It could also be that people are rushing to get a lot of manufacturing and shipping done before the trade war started. It could also be that a lot of people were looking to get a lot of manufacturing and shipping done before the trade war officially kicked into high gear between the U.S. and China. Regardless of why the numbers are looking pretty good right now, in the coming weeks, I'm pretty sure they're going to be complete shit. And that will definitely be Trumple Thinskin's fault. So, time to buy gold. Yeah. And finally, in science news, from ScienceDaily.com, snoozemobiles have vibrations in cars make drivers sleepy. Okay, I don't know about you, but give me about half an hour behind the wheel and I'm passing out. It's almost impossible for me to stay awake. And this says that the natural vibrations of cars make people sleepier. After just 15 minutes, you start to get drowsy. And after about 30 minutes, it's significant, such that about 20% of fatal road crashes involve driver fatigue. And it turns out that's just because the way our seats are built, they give us low-frequency vibrations, and those low-frequency vibrations make us sleepy. And I think this is pretty significant. If they can find a way to build cars or maybe just build seats in order to dampen those low-frequency vibrations and thus help people stay awake, that would be pretty frickin' awesome. I mean, in an age where, obviously moving into the future with with oil becoming more scarce. Now, obviously, as we move into the future, fossil fuels are going to become more scarce, and of course, we're building self-driving cars anyway. But so obviously, there's going to be fewer people behind the wheel. There's going to be a lot more people on mass transit or sitting in driverless cars. But for those enthusiasts who insist on driving their cars themselves, there's going to be some. I think this will be a good thing. Help them to stay awake. And of course, as always, the more you learn, the better off you are, even when the connections aren't necessarily immediately obvious. So look forward to a future in which you can stay awake in the car, not necessarily fall asleep right the fuck away. All right. And that will do it for this week's episode. And that does it for this week's episode. As a reminder, I release this both as a podcast and as a YouTube on my YouTube channel, John Brockman, where you can also find me playing the guitar on a regular basis, nearly always every night. Not necessarily well, but pretty much every night. You can also find me participating in another podcast hosted by my friend Kevin at DungeonsandDebaclespodcast.com, where I and some friends try to destroy the world once a week. So if you've liked my alchemy this week, please go ahead, give me a like, share, subscribe, and maybe leave a positive review in one of those places that accepts reviews. And I've been your alchemist, John Brockman, and I'll see you next week.